Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday, August 10th to everybody listening. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic start to your morning, as I know I absolutely am. Lots to get into here with you. Lots to jump into. Hello, hello. We do have a guest early on. I see him popping on backstage now. Just give me 1 second here to let a couple of people trickle in, and then we're going to jump right into it here. Plenty of things took place over the weekend here that I'm going to want to jump into you guys with. We've got updates on what's going on in Madison. We are a day away from Wisconsin primaries. We have a war that feels like it's never going to end, with a different variation of why exactly we can't bring it to an end. What feels like every day at this point, and so many other things that I want to jump into with you guys here. Now, as I mentioned, tomorrow is the Wisconsin primary. Congressional District 8 is one of the more content or not contentious, competitive. There we go. Competitive primaries out there in 2026. First primary in District 8 for Democrats in 20 years. We've spoken to Mark Scheffler, we've spoken to Katrina DeVille, and now we have our third candidate, somebody who I have met personally a couple of times now at this point and have enjoyed my interactions with. And I want to bring him up here now. So, Rick, we're going to be bringing you. Okay, Mike's a little hot here. Okay, good to know. Good to know now. Hold on 1 second here. All right. Hopefully, that's a little bit better than what we were dealing with there. With that, we're going to be bringing up Rick Crosson, running for Congressional District 8 here. Hello, Rick. How are you this
Hey,
Monday morning?
good morning, Ben. How are you today, sir? Good to
I'm
see you
great.
again.
Yeah, you as well. I'm glad we were able to get this working here. I've been looking
Yes,
forward to this conversation here.
yes,
As I
sir.
mentioned, I met you at an event at a mutual friend of ours, hosted by
Hmm.
Carla Hales, who's in the chat right now.
Yes,
Got to talking with you, and I have to admit, you're a unique blend of, in my opinion, the two parts of the Democratic Party that are kind of vying for attention right now in the political discourse. And I think that'll make itself apparent as you and I continue our conversation here today. So let's jump in where I always start these conversations. This is you're making an effort to enter politics here. What made you decide now is the time?
if you just look at the state of the world, the state of our country, the current conditions that Wisconsinites are facing, um, if not me, then who? I can complain all day long and make a whole lot of noise about the conditions, but then I always end by saying, okay, Rick, so what are you going to do about it? What skill set can you bring to bear to affect this whole situation for the better? So, after a 4 month decision process, after some very key people, very influential people asked me to consider, one of which was Kristen Lyerly, I said, I thought about it and went through the process of figuring out why I should do it. Can I do it? Were the conditions right for achievement of our goals and objectives? And the answers obviously were yes, this is exactly the right time and the set of conditions to do this. And I do believe that I have that level of qualification, skill set, perspective, hopefully some wisdom to not have all the answers, but to know what questions to ask to get to the root cause.
So, and for those that may not be as initiated in the chat, Kristen Lyerly is the candidate from the 2024 election for the same race who ran against Tony Weed. For some of you that may
Yes.
not know who was referenced there. Um, let's jump into probably the main focal point, or what should be the main focal point of any election, the concept of affordability and why you think so many people in Northeast Wisconsin feel as though they are falling behind in this
Yeah.
economy today. How do you address that, and relative to your challengers in the primary, as well as the current person occupying the seat, Tony Weed?
Well, well, look at the conditions. Um, we've got the reality, the objective truth of people working harder as than they've ever worked before, and we're still falling short. So this is not a question of people not contributing, quote unquote, their fair share. You're hearing a lot of negative rhetoric saying that undeserving people, and I again, just these kind of things just trigger me in ways Undeserving people are getting something for nothing. That is not the case in the condition. We've got folks who are uh, have done all the things that are necessary to be contributing members of society, who are putting their heart and soul into this, and they are still falling short because the conditions are just not right for success. So we've got affordable housing. We've got lowering the this whole standard of living below which no one should be existing. We've got people on a continuous hamster wheel, if you will, of poverty. We've got people who are at some point and level are unbothered by the conditions that we're facing. And so it doesn't matter to folks in a certain economic level if gas prices are going up $2 a gallon. They're not bothered by the cost of food going up. But for the majority of Americans, we're having to make life and death decisions at the gas pump. Do I put a full tank of gas in, or do I buy groceries for my family? I've been studying the intricacies and the details of our food assistance programs, and just the current conditions. We take a survey, an annual survey of whether or not somebody feels that they are food insecure. And after the programs have been implemented and people are taking accountability of those programs, SNAP, for example, there's people who are still saying that they are food insecure. So we have a gap in creating food stable environments, even with government food assistance programs. So that tells you right there that there's some problems that our government needs to address. That's the space that we have to get after. Affordability is one of the three watchwords that I'm running off of, or have been running off of: affordability, accountability, and quantifiable results. And yes, you can list a whole bunch of things under the classification of affordability.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment on the matter there, and I do find it interesting because so few people are spared from that affordability crisis. You think
Right.
that would be the common phrase, but you kind of have separated yourself from the pack on that front there. Speaking of affordability, healthcare is obviously a major concern surrounding that capacity to be able to afford things. We
Mhm.
have Badger Care here in the state. You obviously be looking at this more on the federal level. What can we expect from you in terms of changes to healthcare
Yeah.
for the people in this country?
Well, I start with the premise, Ben, that healthcare should be a fundamental human right, without equivocation, without qualification. Part of what we say we're all about is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life. Implied with life means health. You got to be alive. You have to be functional mentally, physically, spiritually, um, financial security. All feeds into that. I'm one of these folks that I don't necessarily look for linear binary solutions to these very complex problems, because if you inject a singular solution thinking it's going to solve a complex problem, you may have just simply moved the problem somewhere else. So I'm all about a comprehensive, all-encompassing look at our healthcare objectives, our vision. Where do we want to be with regard to healthcare and a healthy citizenry at some point in our future? And then we backward plan to where we currently are, which is a state of financial upheaval. We've got insecure in some parts of our state. We have healthcare or hospital deserts where we're losing capacity and capability. We've got corporations who are making corporate profit-based decisions about healthcare. That's not a state that we want to be in. So we want to create a level of discomfort in this current state that moves us toward that final objective. And here again, this is where we assemble perspectives from a 360-degree perspective. I'm a strategist by nature. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel, and I've run large transportation and logistics companies. These kind of things, these kind of decisions and solutions are not built in a vacuum, and they're phased in as we move forward. So we could start with conversations about some immediate support and resolution for certain very distressed groups of people. seniors who are living on very fixed income, low income families who right now are one emergency room visit away from catastrophe, financial catastrophe. We could start with what are the more immediate needs and get after those very quickly with some long-term objectives as we move forward. So that's the space that I'm in as far as looking for healthcare solutions.
You bring up your status as a retired colonel here. Obviously, you and I spoke. That was probably the first conversation we had about what's going on overseas, and obviously, there's an element of the affordability crisis associated with that as well. Although it is not the
Yes.
only driver, there absolutely is an element of what the war in Iran is doing, and this isn't so much a question as much as it is an open forum for you kind of discuss what your past experience allows for you to maybe have some insight into surrounding what the president's doing and what you hope to ultimately see happen regarding the relationship between America, Iran, the Middle East in general. Realistically, we can probably include a couple other countries in there as well.
Yes, sir. I come at this as, first of all, I'm the son of a career soldier. My father is a retired command sergeant major. He's one of those guys, when he walks in a room, everybody sat a little straighter in their chair. And he always taught all of us to leave something better, in a better state than it was when we got there. So following in my father's footsteps, I joined the military as a commissioned officer. And I went through the ranks. I retired as a lieutenant colonel and had a lot of levels of responsibility, from second lieutenant all the way through lieutenant colonel. I was a master Army aviator. I flew in combat aviation units, commanded and controlled, mainly operationalizing commander's intent for very large aviation organizations. And then my culminating role as an officer in the Army was that as a military liaison to the government of Mexico. So I'm very intimate with cross-border operations, with elements or elements of all along the southwest border of our country. And I've got that, and I had diplomatic status. So I carried a U.S. passport, diplomatic passport. So I understand the intricacies of coalition building at the national, international, state, and local level. And then following my career as a military officer, I moved here to Wisconsin to work in the transportation, supply chain, logistics world, starting with a company called Schneider National, and was there for up to 9 years at various executive director level roles. I left there ultimately running a trucking company in central Wisconsin for 9 years as its chief operating officer. So when I look at the state of what's going on in our world today, I see it from a leader's perspective, from a veteran's perspective, from a logistician's perspective. So if we talk about this war, this illegal, ill-conceived, unplanned for, unsanctioned by Congress war, I look at it from all of those perspectives. First of all, Congress and Congress alone has the authority and the responsibility to decide whether or not to commit this country to war. President entered into that on his own. Not buying that one. Second of all, I think our military has been placed in very compromising situations as far as its role, its honor. They have been asked to do things that at some point somebody's going to have to decide whether or not these actions were lawful. So that's a concern of mine. I look at it from a global economic perspective and a global supply chain perspective. Issues like freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation, the free flow of goods across boundaries, all of that has been turned on its head. And I don't know if that part of the genie can ever get put back in the bottle. We've got choke point actions now that if all you have to do is have the threat of a minefield or the threat of drone attacks to disrupt a global supply chain, which is feeding into why the cost of everything here, everything from fertilizer, fuel, food, you name the commodity, it's being affected by this this rash, unplanned for decision. Excuse me. So again, when I go into Congress, and I'm assuming that this will be the case, I'm going at it from a multi levels of perspective to get at resolving this. We've got to have Congress reasserting its responsibility as that check and balance in our government. We've got to fix the economy, the global economy. We've got to restore our position as a respected nation. I never thought that some of our allies would view us as a pariah nation. Never in my life did I think we'd be in that situation. So we got to get that fixed. And then we've got to be vigilant when we do fix this. I think it's bent, severely bent, but it's not broken. And when we fix it, we got to stay vigilant to make sure this scenario never, ever presents itself again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening probably agree with that sentiment there. We're speaking with Rick Crosson. He is running for the 8th Congressional District here in Northeast Wisconsin, primary, of course, being tomorrow. Big topic of conversation. I actually see people talking about it while you and I are talking about other things in the comments right here, so we may as well jump into it. The future of data centers and flock cameras, they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. We can approach this one topic at a time, though, of course. The idea of data centers going up in Wisconsin, it seems as though whether you're talking about it from an environmental standpoint, from a privacy standpoint, from an economic standpoint, there's a lot of consternation by the public surrounding these things popping up. What does the process look like for approving these kind of things were you to come away with a victory here?
Yes. And here again, this is how I look at systems from, when I was running a business, I thought about things from when you get the order all the way through movement of the product, all the way to cash being applied and then money's in the bank, order to cash process. I look at this process of deciding whether or not to implement and put a data center in place from a systems perspective. There's no singular ownership at the local level, state, and federal level of this process by which a decision is made to put a data center in a given community. There should be some ownership of that by our government, at the very least, at the state level, supported by federal government, so that these data centers aren't looking for an easy way in. Right now, they're taking full advantage of the fact that nobody owns the whole process. So they'll slip in, have some conversation, get you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and before the people are even aware of it, it has moved so far along in the process to where the only thing that will be afforded to them at that point is just some cursory meetings, if you will. I ran across that in the village of Wrightstown, where that's what was happening. There was a discovery that these conversations were happening. And so we got involved. I got involved. I purposely went in and helped facilitate some conversation. And now they have a referendum on their bill tomorrow to decide whether or not to move forward with a data center. So there's that aspect of the people having a say in the process and being able to say go or no go with the forward movement of a data center. Now, if you shift gears again, my brain is saying, okay, there's the environmental impact that has to be considered, because these things utilize a great deal of our natural resources, and water being prime, but also land, noise pollution. There's all kinds of environmental impacts with regard to data centers that we have to take some ownership of. There is also this plugging into our electrical grid with them not bringing any of their own energy with them, but simply plugging in and taking from the existing electrical grid and then making us pay for that. I'm not in favor of that at all. I say bring your own power with you, however you figure out how to do that, or figure out a way to subsidize what is existing if the grid can stand it, because these things suck a lot of energy. And then for us to say, collectively, if data centers are going to be a reality in our future, we collectively have to talk about increasing our electrical grid capacity. And that's a federal level of conversation. I'm not letting monopolized energy companies make that decision for me. And so we have to say if AI is going to be a reality in our future, which it seems to be moving in that direction, although I believe there's a bubble, and just like all bubbles, it has the risk of a bust because there's an overinvestment right now in this concept. Nobody really knows what it is and what it will be. So, but we've got to have some conversation along that whole spectrum. And everybody who's playing in this has to be part and parcel of that. Hey, you asked about flock cameras and this surveillance world that we're in. We are being surveilled like nobody's business. Flock cameras is just one manifestation of this concept of people looking into your life without your permission. And I'm not in favor of that at all. And so we have to put some controls, put some boundaries on the information that is gathered and how it's shared, or if it is shared, to make sure that our privacy is protected. So I'm certainly in the space of limiting and regulating any use of any surveillance technology.
To tie that concept in with surveillance, there's a lot of people in favor of what's going on in the world of flock right now because it's perceived as an effort to catch undocumented immigrants and assist
Yeah.
ICE and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
You're running in a district won by Trump, won by a Trump ally in Tony Weed. Um, ICE, however, has overstepped in quite a few different ways over the course, especially of the last 6 months. And depending on the person you ask, they would tell you it goes back a lot longer than that. What is
Mm-hmm.
the future of that relationship with ICE and Northeast Wisconsin and Wisconsin in general look like for you?
Yeah. Well, ICE has definitely been militarized. I am obviously certainly not in favor of what that entity has been turned into. So there has to be, just like everything, there has to be first and foremost a reimagining of what that organization was supposed to do originally, reconfirm what that was and is supposed to be in a future state, and then dramatically reconfigure that organization into something different. And its name has been so sullied, I'd call it something else because it would be something else, not just a cosmetic name change, but it would be something different. I would order an immediate halt to what it's currently doing. There's no assessment that has to happen there. It's doing things that go against who we are as a nation. It goes against laws that are already established. And so that one's an easy one to say, stop doing that right now. And we got to hold people accountable for the things that have been done up to this point. Extrajudicial killings. We've got people's rights being violated, all kinds of issues that have to be addressed. And I'm not for retribution or retaliation. I'm for restorative justice, because the laws that tell you what you should and shouldn't do are already in place. I don't have to create any new laws to go after people who have violated these things that we see as essential. So I'm all about some restorative justice here with regard to what has happened here and who ordered it.
Yeah, you're speaking my language with that one. I oftentimes say it feels like we've kind of lost the point of what the punishment of crime and punishment is
Mhm.
supposed to be about here, and
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's a fairly enlightened way to look at matters here. Taking it overseas one final time. I know I personally asked you this question during the debate last Sunday here, surrounding military aid. We got a large going specifically to Israel and the Middle East, as well as to a number of different places all over the world
Mhm.
here. We talk about the affordability and how government can work for us, and I think there is a growing discontentment with a lot of people in the nation that see our money go overseas when it feels like we have so many holes in our own system here. Were you to win, that money obviously isn't going to Israel. But I had to ask you yes or no questions, and you wanted to expound upon that when I asked it, and I'm giving you the opportunity now to expound upon that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I I was chastised by my campaign team. Said, just say yes or no. And I said, some of these questions have nuance and conditions and perspectives that have to be accounted for before the answer is given. This is sometimes gets us in trouble with these binary solutions. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's not. It wasn't an indictment on your question, but I said, okay, let's qualify that and what he means.
For the
Okay, so
record,
talk
I
about
didn't write
aid
it.
to our allies. It depends on the ally. And it depends on what our national objectives are and our objectives for the rest of the world. So here again, we set those conditions and define that as clear as we can make it. We want to ally ourselves with countries who have democratic principles, who are moving their countries towards the same objectives that we are. We believe in human dignity. We're not interested in aggressive war that seeks to conquer. So if we're with countries who don't align with that, they're not getting our help. In fact, they're going to get our attention because we're going to try to help them see a better way. Hopefully in a way that is progressive, that moves it forward. It doesn't have to be a negative confrontation in that space. That's about dialogue and communication and diplomacy, by the way, which seems to be a lost art, because that's how things get moved forward. They have to see that there is a better way to be than whatever it is they're doing wrong. So if somebody decides that, hey, after all of that, I still am not going the way that you, United States, would like us to go, then we have to talk about, okay, there's consequence for that. There's not going to be certain aid to, say, for example, your military or your military endeavors. And we're going to call you out when we see you doing wrong. We're not going to have a problem with that at all. So I'm in that space. That's the space that I'm in with regard to support of our allies. Now, if you want to ask about specific countries right now, and let's go ahead and go there. What I see happening with the Netanyahu regime, I take serious issue with what's going on. I don't see where that is in the best interest of that country. He's not polling popular in his own country, so some of his own people have issue with that. So we have to be on the correct side of things that render the right amount of support. This is not one of those things where I can't take a sledgehammer approach to cutting off all support to Israel. I am not in the space of doing that, but I am in full support of calling out these things that are not aligned with our values and the values of the majority of the Israeli people. I do believe we need to fix that problem immediately because too many people are losing their lives as a result of this quest that they are on.
We're speaking with Rick Crosson, running in Congressional District number 8 in Northeast Wisconsin. We're just about out of time here. I just have 2 more left for you. First of all, enough with all the softballs. Do you have any controversial holiday opinions?
Holiday opinions. Oh, gosh.
That seems to be the only thing. I'm joking. All right, chat's jerking me around here.
I love all of our holidays. I think we should all celebrate who and what we are and what we bring to the table. Holidays, like anything else, comes with a perspective, obviously. Yeah. And there's a desire to celebrate the good that perspective brings. So I have no problem with that. I am a realist about why certain holidays came to being. I love studying the history of how holidays even happened. So I'm very much a realist, and I look for the objective truth that sits in all of that. Once all of that's done and the holiday still remains, it actually allows me to celebrate it more because it says, okay, this is cool. This is the reality of things. But at the end of it, there is this notion and a vision of something better on the other side of it. So I'm all for doing that. I don't want to deny the reality of history. I'm not in that space at all.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, so, I'm good with it.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. You can have the question and have the turkey. I'm right there with you. I hope that satiates you guys in the chat there. Last question. I end all of these the exact same way. Um, we could have addressed housing. We could have addressed public transportation. We could have addressed
Mhm.
dozens of different other issues. I could keep you here for 5 hours if I wanted to.
I'd love it.
What's one thing that I didn't get to? If there were one message that you want to leave people voting here, or that are going to be voting tomorrow, what's
Yeah.
one thing that you think exemplifies you, your campaign, whatever it is you stand for, that you want people to take from this conversation?
Yes, sir. I want people to come. I'm coming to talk to people. I'm truly hoping for your vote tomorrow. But when we meet, we're going to talk about what we are for. I don't want to give a lot of oxygen to the negativity and the tropes and all of that, those issues, not to diminish the issues, but I want to focus on what collectively are we for. Some people actually think that's a trick question because they've spent so much time in the negativity that when you say, okay, I heard all of that, what are you for? There hasn't been a lot of thought given to it. So put some thought into what are you for? Are you for a stable economy? Are you for a healthy America? Are you for leaning into saying yes to people who want to be here to be part of the American dream? Are you for collective bargaining? Are you for Native American sovereignty? So let's talk about what we're for so that we can then agree that that now is our foundation for moving forward. We have a common ground, a common set of foundational understandings about what we're for, and that will then propel the country forward. That's where the magic happens, Ben, and I've seen it. Every conversation I have with every person ends in, Rick, I get you. We have more in common than we have differences. And let's move forward together. I hear it all across the socioeconomic spectrum, the political spectrum, you name the spectrum. And there's folks who are in great agreement, sometimes violent agreement, about what it is that we're for. And that's when we will move the country together collectively.
Rick Crosson running Congressional District 8. It's too bad it's not a national position because we have people in Kansas City and California and Pennsylvania all saying they wish you were running in their district. So it seems like you've impressed some people in the chat here. Good luck tomorrow. And if you can come out of this with a victory, we'll get you back on for the general. All right?
Yes, sir. We'll see you on the other side. Take care,
Sounds
Ben.
good. Good luck tomorrow. Yep. Take it easy.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, and that does it for that conversation there. That's Rick Crosson, District 8. If you didn't get a chance to listen, I did create a Facebook post this morning, kind of teasing that he was coming on. And in that post, in the comments, I also included the links for my interviews with Katrina DeVille and Mark Scheffler as well. So that's all three candidates running for the Democratic side of the ticket, obviously against Tony Weed, who is running unopposed. And we'll try and get him on this show. I mean, I'll hold my breath, but you never know. People want to get their opinions heard. You come on this show, there's most certainly nowhere else doing real political talk in Northeast Wisconsin. Um, but all those are available. I can't believe we're there tomorrow. It's frustrating that we lost internet access for like a week and a half in the lead up to the primary because there's quite a few candidates I would have liked to get on before the primary that looks like it's going to be a bit of a tight squeeze getting into the finish here. But plenty of interviews over the course of the last couple of weeks, all available on the Outside the Box Ben Comino's YouTube page. Just search my name. Don't type out the box, just type Ben Comino's, and it'll pop up. And maybe consider subscribing while you're over there. Bibi says we got to get that man elected. Ethan saying liking a lot what this guy has to say, very polished and well spoken. I also heard Ethan you ran into my friend Carla over the weekend as well. Kevin simply says, "Thank you, Rick." Ecuador making Star Wars jokes in the chat there. Cassandra saying, "Common sense for the win." Brian says, "I'm from the 6th district across the river from the 8th. We have a lot of good Democrats running for both districts and should easily be able to beat Tony and Glenn." Well, I surely hope so. This veteran is voting for you. Glad you had him on. Great interview. I love holidays. All holidays an excuse for a day off and a party. Absolutely. Absolutely. But his answer actually was very good because there are problematic parts to some holidays as well, and I think acknowledging the history behind them while also celebrating them was the exact answer. Like that was a solid answer to a joke question, you know? And like realistically, I was even going to joke and make it binary, be like you have to answer yes or no cuz he just said he was taking crap for not answering yes or no. And but like that really isn't a binary question because you can be like, Thanksgiving does have some problematic origins mixed with the feeling of, turkey is pretty good. You can do that. The Rickest of the Ricks, send him to the Citadel, says Harambe. For those of you that aren't Rick and Morty fans, that was a funny joke. Ferg says he still prefers DeVille. Violated Elf says didn't like his answer around flock and data centers as well as Israel. Thank you for the roses, by the way, Preston. Thank you for being here. How do I feel about Nick Fuentes? Not a fan. I think he's a bit of a bigot. That being said, he does speak his mind and he's willing to call out his own party, which is refreshing to see, especially when they're in power as well as out of power. But it's hard for me to see past the obvious hatred of just different races and ethnicities of people. So, I mean, like, all the good ideas in the world can't undo that kind of attitude, especially in 2026. Like, I feel like, just to highlight that I can be a hypocrite sometimes, like, I will hand wave away Japanese internment camps under FDR in the name of, like, oh, well, do you see all this good stuff that happened? He really was a good president. But, like, it also was a much more simple time. And, like, it's not excusable, but, like, it feels different when it's in the 30s, 40s, and 50s than when it's in 2026, I guess, to answer that question. Um, Ali says Rick has a nuanced take on every subject, which means he's done his work and his research and his heart is in it. All the things we usually criticize. Such a breath of fresh air. I agree. I meant to get into that part of the conversation with him, but when I saw him speak 3 or 4 weeks ago, um, he went on to go on about what capacity a. Oh yeah, by the way, I should probably share the link in case anybody wants to chime in and talk here. What capacity a freshman House member actually has to enact change and being realistic. Um, about what one House member can do. And I think oftentimes in this world, I mean, and I'm guilty of it, in this world of looking for that transcendent change, that change that is truly going to redefine the trajectory that this country is on, you might get mad when somebody is realistic, expresses nuance, expresses a desire to address these things, but not necessarily a perceived urgency. But I agree with you, Ali. I think it's more so a matter of having that nuance, being realistic, and understanding what you can and can't deliver on, so that inevitably in 18 months, when you're running for reelection, there aren't people saying, you said you'd do this, and we're nowhere near that because you're only one person in the House. Allow me to refresh my Facebook page here really quickly. I'm going to see what's going on down there in the world of comments. Am I the only one who had issues with his stance on data centers and flock cameras? I believe that's Elf again. Kim says, "Wow, super impressed with this guy. I don't live in his district, but if I did, he would have my vote." Shauna Riley showing up saying, "Good luck to Rick tomorrow. I told everyone in the break room to vote for him. Have an amazing day." Um, yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Carla says Rick will be at the Allegheny County Dens meeting tonight for anyone local who wants to meet him or ask any questions directly. There you go there. Um Yeah, Ethan, I did share your meme. You can't send me shit and expect me not to post it, and I posted it everywhere, not just on the Boomer site. So yeah, you're right. You're right. You got me. Um Carla says, I know he isn't perfect, but I truly believe Rick is who we need to come out of this primary. Volunteering for him and getting to know him this past year has been an honor. And I will say, to highlight Elf's point, the data center conversation is such low hanging fruit. It should be pretty easy to just be like, we're not going to do this. But it seems as though this is going to be a pervasive issue. And to be perfectly frank, it seems as though we're probably going to be dealing with it in the 2028 presidential election as well. Much to my chagrin. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And you're going to see it evolve. I actually saw a pro data center piece from Utah, and it was showing a woman. I don't know which channel it was on. I apologize. I saw it on social media and I didn't save it. Otherwise, I would just play it for you guys. But it shows a woman who was given like a $250,000 grant from Meta to build this little greenhouse that grows like 500 heads of lettuce every so often. I don't know exactly how often. And the mainstream is now trying to present these data centers in a positive light. Look at all the great things that Meta is doing for this community in Utah. And what's funny is 250 grand for Meta is basically like couch cushion money. Like when you find an extra $20 bill in your pocket and you go, you're like, oh, looks like I'm going to be drinking good tonight. That's essentially the equivalent of what a $250,000 donation is. And I find that funny because the people specifically on the right who try and tell you like you shouldn't be looking for handouts, the free market will fix itself. Meta picked this one random woman to receive a $250,000 grant, and then nobody else is going to get anything, and the mainstream media runs that story up the flagpole with the intention of trying to convince you that these data centers are pretty all right if you stop and think about it for a second. And it's kind of wild, personally. Like I find, because you're seeing the narrative try and shift on the national scene, because they have been met with so much pushback in the immediate, well, not immediate because it's been going on for a couple years, but in the last year, you're starting to see that real pushback start to happen in a way, and so the media obviously has to kick in a way to make it appear less viable. Speaking of that, really quickly, I do have this clip that highlights it because I know sometimes I tick off the boomers in the audience because I'll make a wide sweeping statement about something and then inevitably you guys will be like, no, not me. I don't feel that way. I want to play talking about the national media trying to kind of put their thumb on the scale to impact the general attitude of a population. You watch it happen with data centers, and now that we are about to hit prettiest girl at the ball status again as Wisconsin has another major primary, I came across this MS Now post on socials this morning and I have to play it for you. It's not that I want you to, I'm going to play the whole thing. It's only 56 seconds long, but it's towards the end. It's the woman with all white hair who has a thought about the election, and I just want to say this is how the mainstream media still works. It has no impact on millennials or Gen Z or realistically Gen X. Nobody cares what comes out of CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, any of the funky bunches' mouth. I can already see Robin saying, hey, I'm a boomer. This is exactly my point. Hashtag not all boomers, but doesn't change the fact that this is a lot more prevalent than people want to realize. This is an actual conversation about the Wisconsin governor's race happening in national media right now.
The difference between Francesca and other politicians is it's someone I can finally believe in. It's not like the lesser of two evils, or I go out, I'm like, oh, I guess I'll have to vote for, this person because I don't want to vote for that person.
So the governor's backing of Crowley means a lot to you.
Right.
What about Francesca Hong?
She kind of scares me. I never saw too much of her to begin with, but what I heard, she wants to cancel Thanksgiving, really too far left.
Are you
Problem
kidding me?
for voters like that.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Somebody actually wants to stop data centers. They want to take $2 billion worth of data center investment and instead Invest it in reopening the rural hospitals that have been closing all over our state. Instead, invest it in the schools that have been underfunded since well before I ever moved out here. Invest $2 billion that's supposed to go to these mega corporations and put it into literally anything else. And she's scared because she heard that Francesca Hong is going to cancel Thanksgiving. And that's not a MAGA. At least I don't think it is. I guess it could be a MAGA that's crossing over to vote in a Democratic primary, but I highly doubt that that's the case. That's a liberal boomer woman who watches mainstream media, obviously, because statistically speaking, I'm right, and decides to say, I'm not going to vote for her. And actually, she scares me because I heard she wants to get rid of Thanksgiving. And like what sounds laughable if you are a regular outside the box listener, all of a sudden is very much in the mainstream. When you listen to more generic news sources. And so, no, hashtag not all boomers. I totally agree with you. But the fact of the matter is, I am not wrong when I am saying that the only reason that Francesca Hong is a viable candidate in 2026 is because of people 45 and under. And if it were for people older than that, we most certainly would be going with a more generic milquetoast candidate that I maintain will ultimately have a worse chance in the election were that to be the candidate that ultimately gets chosen. Again, I'm voting for whoever comes out of this. I'm throwing my weight behind Hong, but I'm voting for whoever comes out of this election because Republicans do not have a goddamn idea of what they actually want to do to improve our lives, and that has been made abundantly clear. Culture war slop works on the ignorant. I agree. But then that reminds you then, Kay, that like most people, not even not all, but most people are in fact not watching outside the box, and more importantly, aren't really watching much of any political discourse. They're seeing memes, they're seeing people complain about fake shit, and when somebody comes up with a complex issue to address data centers and wealth inequality and all these things, and they have to compete with no more turkey in November, we are a dumb enough nation that will work on some people. CKK says these are the things my mom's friends say. Boomer site is Facebook, Brian. Gotcha. Can you let her know my channel is interested in showing support for the show? We are not political, so it will stand out. I did post Ben in our community page. You got likes. I appreciate you very much, Susan. I need to learn more how we can coalesce. I'd be down to help you out with your page as well. We can talk more off the air. Most people are below average intelligence. I would argue it's half, Brian. Maybe they're below median intelligence, but if it's the average intelligence, I would say half people are below it and half people are above it. It's math. Violet simply says war on Christmas. Exactly. I actually, back when I was on that little radio station, would anytime we were approaching Christmas, I would say Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas. Pretend I said whichever one makes you more mad, and that was how I would sign off in December. Kristen says, it's in quotes, I didn't vote for Trump for his tweets. I voted for his policies. Same people crying about this. Exactly. Violet says they believe honestly that some politician is going to cancel holidays. Like, it's wild. Kristen says, so disgusted at the national media for running with this too. Well, you know what that says to me, Kristen? And it's like I always say, when I watch media, it's as much about what they don't say as much as it is what they do say. And to me, when you have to use a woman coming out and complaining, about canceling Thanksgiving, that says to me that you didn't have people coming out of the polling place and complaining about real issues. So that was the best, or at least most attention-grabbing one you could find. And no, CKK, I didn't call you Brian. Brian is Brian Hahn, who says, who asked me what the Boomer site is on Facebook. I didn't call you Brian, big cat. Get out of here. Carla says, wait, someone on YouTube was bringing up Bill Maher again. It's like Maher said, if you said something, just own it. She said cancel Thanksgiving, deleted it, never brought it up again. Just be honest. Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree with you, and I wish she would hire me to just do her communications, because I feel like you can make this a nothing burger very quickly. You can say it's very easy to understand that the basic principle of Thanksgiving is brought about by the time in American history when the Pilgrims were about to starve and freeze to death, and so the Native Americans gave them a massive feast to help them kind of regain their strength, and be able to persist. And then we thanked them by essentially exterminating their entire people, and even go on to continue pillaging all of their different lands for national resources and any wealth we may derive from there later. And acknowledging that does not say, I'm not saying that we that we have to cancel Thanksgiving and you don't get to eat turkey on the fourth Thursday of the month anymore. But you can also acknowledge that there is an issue with that that's kind of difficult to avoid. And that's why I liked Rick's answer as much as I did. Because it acknowledges the history while still saying, like, let's move forward. And again, I guarantee you, the number of people pissed off about the idea that Thanksgiving would get canceled is almost a circle. It's not a Venn diagram, it's just a circle with the people who are super mad that people are trying to make Juneteenth a national holiday. And if you said to me, Ben, which one of these two things is more deserving of a national holiday and recognition? The day that black people were treated as free people just as the whites were, or the day that essentially celebrates a feast with a population of people that a lot of our ancestors were ultimately responsible for some pretty bad things happening to them? Realistically, up until the present, I would argue it's probably the former. And I don't think that that's a bold declarative statement. And this is not me saying cancel Thanksgiving. It's just having a basic capacity. Realistically, it's the Hassan Piker conversation all over again. She was on Hassan Piker, and he said that America deserved 9/11. No, he said that America's foreign policy would inevitably lead to 9/11. And that seems like a pretty reasonable statement. And I would say the same thing about October 7th. Like, if you're going to act the way that America, Israel, and the Western allies have acted, specifically towards the Muslim population around the world, inevitably the violence is going to find its way aimed back at us. That's not me saying I'm happy it happened. It's not me saying we deserved it. It's not me saying that anything positive about what took place. I'm saying it's basic understanding of actions and consequences leading to it. And what the Republican Party preys on is exactly how dumb we are as a nation, and hoping that if they just make it a headline, they already own most of the social media. My social media feed is exclusively negative Hong. There is no positive Hong news other than the stuff coming from Francesca Hong's account itself. And even that, I am barely even seeing any posting from, despite the fact that it is pretty obvious. So, they hope to own the narrative by taking very complex conversations, boiling them down to the most basic thing. She wants to get rid of Thanksgiving and loves terrorism. But will that actually work? And unfortunately, when you're watching Democratic voters fall for it, you have to believe that that means conservative voters are more than happy to lap that shit up with a spoon and then move along and vote for Tom Tiffany, who quite frankly has done nothing but actively make your life worse economically the entire time that he was in office, especially in Trump 2.0. But that's not the way they want to have that conversation. They want it to be about Hassan Piker and Thanksgiving, because it sure as fuck can't be about the economy. Robin just simply says the country's falling apart, but yeah, let's worry about Thanksgiving. Exactly. Exactly. And that's what's so crazy is that every single day Donald Trump has a scandal. You know what I mean? Every single day, whether it's the $1.8 billion slush fund, whether it's him declaring people domestic terrorists who end up getting assassinated by ICE, whether it be the Board of Peace Fund, fill in the blank. Donald Trump has a new scandal every single day. This is the difference between MAGA and liberals and ultimately progressives, is that love it or hate it, MAGA's message discipline is fucking wild. They can take one scandal and they will not shut up about it for 4 years. If Francesca Hong wins the primary and wins the governorship in November, MAGA will be running on cancel Thanksgiving in 2030, because that's how consistent they are on messaging. Benghazi happened. Let's talk about Benghazi every day, literally every day until it ends. Donald Trump blew up a school. Let's move on now. Let's not even mention that it took place, and we're never going to talk about it again. Hunter Biden and his laptop. Yeah, let's talk about that every single day. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump are invested in defense contractors and mines everywhere. Let's never talk about that. And liberals will talk about it, and then inevitably will move on to the thing the next day. The economy is a cesspool. We are embroiled in another Middle Eastern war that not a single person actually was asking for. And yet Republicans are messaging on and somehow fucking winning on the idea that the candidate wants to eliminate Thanksgiving. We sort of deserve what we get in the long run. Kristen says millennials have the best media literacy. It's our time. I would agree. Violet says Fox talks about trans people every single day. Yes, they do. That's one of my running bits on this show. Right-wingers say, I'm sick and tired of hearing about the transes. And I'm like, well, then stop listening to right-wing radio, because nobody else is talking about it. Or right-wing media, I should say, because nobody else is talking about it. The only reason I talk about an issue dealing with the transgender community is because right-wingers are fucking with them. And like, if you just stopped messing with them, then I wouldn't be there to talk about it. I would be jumping into the economic issues of the day. And then I do my rounds in the morning, and I come across a screaming fit coming from the Morning Joe, whatever the hell his name is. Because socialists and progressives are fans of 9/11 and October 7th. And that was how he was phrasing it. If you want to sit there, he even had Pablo Torres, who is a millennial. He's on that show regularly, and he's like, what Hassan and so many progressives are saying is that U.S. foreign policy and ultimately Israel's foreign policy led to these attacks that led to the deaths of so many people in both America and Israel, respectively. And he was met with shouting and derision because the older generations per capita don't want to hear these conversations. They don't want to hear that America was the bad guy in the perception of a lot of people around the world, because we're told something differently. I'm telling you guys, you need to watch the movie Snowpiercer. When they have all the little kids, when they're in the kindergarten cart of the train is a metaphor for life, for society. And at one point they're on the train and they're showing you the kindergarten kids be taught how the train works. They're like, and what happens if the train doesn't work? We all burn and die. And what happens if we don't do our part to keep the system running? We all burn and die. And like, millennials are kind of the first generation, and it's probably because of social media, to kind of look at what we were taught about American history, about American foreign policy, and the perception of people that people have of our country around the world. And it's like, well, no, I get that. I still am proud to be an American, and I like that I was born here, and I was certainly afforded with the ability to do a lot of cool things with my life because I'm an American. But I also have enough of a deductive reasoning to be like, well, seems like we did some pretty messed up stuff for the better part of our entire existence, as have most countries. I think that's where people get hung up on this, is that I understand that if there were another country that became the superpower in the 1940s, they by and large would have done all the exact same things that America did. I'm not saying that America is uniquely evil. I am saying that as time goes on and humanity evolves, it should be pretty straightforward to be able to look at what we have done to the Middle East and understand why it is that the people in those countries feel the way they do, why they chant death to America, and no, it's not because of our freedoms. Why someone might say, there's a lot of issues with Thanksgiving that I really don't think we've ever truly reconciled with. We take people when they're in third grade. I'm not saying you have to teach them about the genocide of the Native American populations, but when the only thing they teach you is that natives taught us how to make corn and then we all make a bunch of hand turkeys, I don't think it really opens the door for a lot of critical thought about the holiday. And instead of embracing these kind of complex issues, about 30 to 40% of us just get angry when we hear anybody express basic common sense. KG says, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Don't care if it's sincere wishing me well. If it's culture wars, fuck off. Jar Manny says, there are a number of things that pop up in my own Facebook memories that make me question what the hell I was thinking at the moment to post that. DJ Benza says, if Democrats back Tong, she will win a landslide victory against Tiffany, but something tells me if she wins the primary, they will not support her. I got a bad feeling about that as well, but a lot of people are saying the right things. And not to toot my own horn, but do you guys kind of notice that the people of Northeast Wisconsin in the political world kind of walk on eggshells about talking shit about Francesca Hong? Because I know I'm waiting behind them, just ready to give a rock bottom to anybody who wants to. Again, if she loses, cool. I'll be disappointed, but I absolutely will show up and vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think it's just a matter of meeting everybody where they are. And I don't know if DJ Benz is right or wrong, but I hope you're wrong. But I think there might be something to that. Hold on, TikTok thinks I'm a robot. Nope, just consistent, buddy. There we go. What's up, Nataki? Thanks for showing up. Cassandra says, how about all those closed Capital One accounts? Absolutely nuts the media isn't reporting on that. That's what I'm saying. It's just every day there's a new thing, and then that's kind of the detriment to Democrats. Not that they're infallible, but that they do scandals significantly less than Republicans, and Republicans are just very good at messaging consistency. Again, I cannot stress enough. I have to phrase this carefully because I can't describe any kind of harm coming to myself. I would go crazy. I would go crazy. Like, I go out of my way to make sure that every day's show has different topics than the one that came up before it. Unless, of course, there's just a major story. But by and large, I try to keep my stories changing and varied every single day. And because I'm not a propaganda arm of a political party, and very clearly a large percentage decided they want to be that, and Republicans have mastered us. Heather says, tell us about King Thanos and how he kept the Hulk in jars and the Mr. Fantastic chair. It's a little above my pay grade. This isn't the venue for that. That's more of a Ben After Dark thing, Heather. So if you want to swing by for like the fun parts of me, then come back at 7 p.m. Central Time and we can jump into that conversation there. Wait, what's Ali saying? Too much millennial glaze. Y'all need Gen Z to do anything. Don't even. You had y'all time. No. We're setting the standard. Here's the difference, Ali. We actually have assets. So you guys can yell your little things from the gutter there, but you're going to need us, unfortunately. And we're here for you. We're here for you. But we are going to go down as the greatest generation. I hate to break it to you. Trump's brutal budget cuts are going to make some American cities look like third world nations due to a massive spike in homelessness in 2027. Homelessness will spike. You're probably right. Although I will say spike is one thing, but homelessness has been going up since COVID. Full stop. Doesn't matter if it was a Democratic trifecta, Republican trifecta, or a mixed bag. No stop there. Kristen says the 90s called. They said we invented your current style. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. My country of Ecuador will soon surpass America in terms of economy, housing, prices, food prices, all above once I'm there. Yeah, okay. Ethan says, I read a book about the British Empire in college, and a professor justified that it was actually reasonable in its colonialism because it was better than the other power at the time, being France. I think about a lot when you look at American history. Japanese internment camps were terrible, but compared to other powers at the time, it was good that America was the winner, the superpower. Yes, yes, I agree with that, and mostly from a sentiment of what's happening in so many other places around the nation. But it's not. That's really hard because I do think you're right. I do think that sentiment is accurate, but I also know that we leave a lot to be desired. But it's confusing. Can you guys hear that music that's blaring outside of my apartment right now? I can hear it very faintly in my headphones when I'm talking. I don't know if anybody else could hear that, and it's throwing me off. It sounds like Ethan's question is throwing me off, but it's not that. It's that I'm trying to think, and it sounds like there's some music going on in the background. The average homeowner is old as shit. Excuse me, the average homeowner is roughly my age, Allie. Calm down with that. Um, yeah, some people can hear it, some people can't. It's Allie with those young ears is how she can hear what's happening there. But so, all right, I'm gonna pull up. Yeah, see politics with Nick. I have a feeling TikTok can handle it. This mic isn't plugged into TikTok yet, and it has a noise cancellation, so there's a chance that the YouTube and Facebook watchers can't hear it. But I can hear it in my headphones for sure, and then there's really no means of noise cancellation for TikTok, so you guys can kind of hear it off in the distance. I'm surprised because um when somebody moves out, like I'm going to move out of this apartment in 3 weeks. When someone moves out of here, they just tear the whole apartment down to the studs and rebuild it. It's probably a tax write-off if I had to think about it. But oh my God, that's so loud. Um, Now I'm losing my train of thought of what I was talking about here. God. If you guys can't hear this, that's blowing my mind. That's so funny to me. Um, yeah, I'll figure out the mic after the fact. I'm all clustered right now. But in any event, Havana syndrome is real. Yeah, they're crushing me with it right now, dude. So I'm gonna go through some Facebook comments here, and then after that, I do want to move on to a conversation surrounding the encampment in Madison. Corey Ruiz was shot, killed. Some might say executed. I might say executed by police officers. Shot 3 times while laying down on his back after having allegedly stabbed a police officer. Um, and I want to get into the demands. We had a conversation last week about what are the demands coming from that encampment. There needs to be an end game. There needs to be a goal. Well, fun fact, there's an end game and a goal that was made available and put in writing that I would like to jump into with you guys. Before we do that, though, Deanne says, we as a nation should be better than we are during Japanese camps, but clearly at least a third of us are doing the same with ICE. I agree. And we are much more evolved at this point and should absolutely know better. Christ on a bike, says Kim. Seriously, come on. Why am I stuck in this generation? I am stuck in it by 2 years. And why are you so stupid no matter how old you are, no matter what generation you are in? This boomer was born in 1963. My God, can they not critically think? Yes, the Thanksgiving thing is a total nothing burger, but the only thing the national media is talking about. It is so maddening. I just can't understand the blatant stupidity. Um, yeah, seems like that's the general consensus of what's going on Facebook right now. Yeah, that woman had me going. That woman had me going, and it was a mixture of seeing that clip in conjunction with watching MSNBC have a complete meltdown over the idea that someone might be able to look at terrorist attacks with a degree of complexity in a way that so few people are able to do. Um, And inevitably, if I do run for office, because this is all archived on my Outside the Box Ben Comino's YouTube page, which everybody should subscribe to, um, inevitably these sound clips are going to be pulled and used against me in my future life because I'm supporting violence in the nation, because that's just how much complexity we're willing to address these things with. But so, in any event, that's future Ben's problem. I don't need to worry about any of that for right now. Let's jump into the next story here. Allow me to just briefly work on bringing up the list. Where'd you go? All right. There they are. All right. So this is as of the Prioritize the People Coalition. Yeah, I don't watch Morning Joe either, Anthony. I don't watch any mainstream media because I want to be informed. I watch mainstream media to see the way that they are talking about the stories that I'm intending to talk about on this show, because I know inevitably they are trying to put a spin on it to try and keep people voting against their own self-interest. That, to me, is my main frustration, is that, for instance, you have this Hassan Piker conversation. You have this thing about, like, the Democratic Socialists and the progressives, they have a really good idea in terms of economic fairness. I appreciate that, Elf. He says, I want to be informed, so I watch Ben Cominos. There we go. They have really good ideas about healthcare and economic equality and all these different things, but then they talk about no more weapons to Israel, and I lose the thread. Even if you're frustrated with Netanyahu, they need to have a capacity to defend themselves, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, well, then where's the liberal candidate suggesting any of those things? You know what I mean? They'll sit there and bitch about foreign policy that I agree with coming from the left, and then say, actually, their populism and economic agenda does have quite a few people that are throwing their backing behind it and a ton of support within most communities around America. And there's not a single liberal that is able to come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, I do want to allow Israel to continue doing the genocide, but also I'm going to tax the rich and we're going to do Medicare for all. Like, if you really believe that, if your main concern is making sure that the weapons continue flowing, and by the way, I'm not even sure that those kind of Democrats can even win anymore, but let's just assume for the purposes of this thought experiment that they would. Why is there not a populist left message emerging from the centrist flank? If the main concern is the rampant anti-Semitism of the left, why not then run candidates that speak out to the contrary of what socialists, progressives, and leftists are saying about Israel, but mirroring the economic agenda that so many people agree with, the data center agenda, the fill-in-the-blank agenda? I am watching people say right now that the Democrats need to make 2026 about waste, fraud, and abuse the way that the Republicans did in 2024. Great. I will give you a head start. The Pentagon has failed 6 audits in a row. We pay more than the next 9 countries combined per year for our Defense Department, most of which are allies. How have we run out of munitions in a half a year? Waka waka. There's your waste, fraud, and abuse, liberals. It's the only thing you need to point to. Not Donald Trump, not social spending, not Social Security. Just ask the simple question. $860 billion when Democrats were in control per year for the Defense Department. They cannot pass an audit. How are we out of weapons? Where is that money going? Because you can't show us on paper where it's going, and yet Republicans just voted to double that budget. As Robin says, 1.5 trillion and no weapons. Exactly. Ethan says a lot of very big houses in Northern Virginia. Not sure who lives there. Richmond, north of Richmond, correct? We all know where it's going. Exactly. I am being dense for the purposes of this rhetorical experiment. I know where it's going. Look up stock buybacks in the Defense Department, defense industry. And again, back in 1993, there were over 50 defense contractors. There are now 6. This is yet another industry that has been cannibalized by monopolization, and now these 6 companies are raking in record contracts for defense spending, and they either can't or won't keep up with production. And so now we find ourselves short stock, and you know what's going to happen is the Democrats are going to come out of the woodwork and be like, look, I don't want to vote for this either, but we got to make sure America's safe, and we got to meet Republicans in the middle here on this defense budget. And I'm going to go fucking nuts, because inevitably they are going to have an excuse for why we can't end the war in Iran and why we have to continue increasing defense spending even though they cannot account for these things. Nationalize the Defense Department. Don't allow there to be any profit made on defense spending going forward, and then fix the goddamn shortfall. And then I don't want to hear anything about this again. Medicare for all, thank you. Stevie says there better be some cool-ass space lasers coming to justify the lack of pew-pew. Yeah, you know, I don't think it's coming, and to be even more frank, I don't think I want it. Oh, what happened to Ben? Heard he spontaneously combusted. Yeah, it's rare. It's rare, but I've heard it. All right. Let's get into Madison, shall we? I need a sip of this really quickly. This show's flying by today. I don't know about for anybody else. Oh, by the way, as I'm sure you were all wondering, it sounds like I said that sarcastically, but I know a lot of you were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. By the way, I've stopped responding, so now these are just all completely unsolicited. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 more emails from Mr. Pingle over the weekend, on top of the mid-20 something that I got over the course of 3 days prior to that. Yeah, the most recent one, I will just jump on this and see. Progressive playbook failures. Cry Epstein. Force and embarrass the Clintons to testify. Accuse Trump of being a pedo. Tim Walz pardons a pedo. Scream Iranian war. Benghazi files released. Scream ICE. Daily flights leaving blue cities to the very countries that the illegals are fleeing. Scream socialism. Suitcases of money leaving Minnesota daily and children left behind malnourished. You pay your 50% pay 3% of income tax. That guy's vote counts just as much of any of yours. You know what's funny, Brian, is Craig actually started emailing me as well. He mocked Katrina DeVille for being transgender and then accused me of being high during Friday's show, so then I blocked him again. Waka waka. Remember the early days of the Ukraine war when we all laughed at the fraud and theft that left the Russian army hamstrung? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I don't think it's any yeah. Um Oh, well, thank you very much. Politics with Nick says he loves my commentary. I appreciate you very much. Elf says someone's got a crush on me. CKK is telling me I should report it to the authorities. I'm just gonna. I think I figured it out. I think he actually hates Kirk Bangstad of the Minocqua Brewing Company quite a bit, and just the fact that I'm affiliated. I don't think he understands the nature of Kirk and I's relationship, where he's syndicating my show and I write for him, and I think he's very confused about how the two of us operate. Um, and I mean, he's a Republican voter, so I feel like confused is just a synonym at that point. Oh, jing. But anyway, all right, let's get into this conversation about the demands of the prioritize the people coalition, because I read them through. I looked through what was going on here. And Ben's got jokes today. Yeah, I come with them from time to time. How about that Holy Trinity joke on Friday? I saw my career flash before my eyes, and like now I think I might make it into a shirt because I can't help myself. But so, oh, hey, Jorge, long time no see. What's going on, man? All right, so coalition demands coming out of Madison. There are 10 of them. Arrest the killer cop Keel Peterson. Reopen the case of Richard Lee Johnson. Fire Matt Kenney. Fully fund Office of Independent Monitor and Police Civilian Oversight Board. All information given to Office of Independent Monitor, OIM, and Police Civilian Oversight Board in accordance to law. Exclusion of disciplinary power given to Police Civilian Oversight Board to hire and fire officers. Strengthen the CARES program to be accessible 24 hours a day and establish an independent hotline. Establish a Dane County Civilian Oversight Board. End qualified immunity for officers. Disarm police officers. Disarm patrol officers. Now, the last one's probably going to run into a little bit of pushback, but I'm not going to lie, a lot of these actually seem incredibly viable in terms of things that should probably be expected in a moment like this. Look, as I've stated before, I think a lot of people want to be couch warriors when it comes to some of these conversations because you never know how you're going to react in a situation. That being said, the fact that you are put in a situation to begin with is oftentimes brought about by a lack of calm, cool, and collected understanding in a certain situation. I happen to know, as someone who is a bit jumpy, I would not be someone that you want in that kind of situation. It's why I never applied to be a police officer, and there's a good chance that a lot of the people that are police officers might be better suited to do something else. The fact is, when a man with a melee weapon, because a knife cannot do any long-term damage, you don't want him sprinting at an unarmed pedestrian or something like that, but by and large, once you have him surrounded by 3 or 4 police officers, the basic concept of being outnumbered should kick in. Remember the song, Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster? When you're 5 guys down, what the fuck you gonna do? Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster. Guy was down quite a few people, really not a necessity to put as many bullets as they did into one person. I think at a bare minimum, and I think I made this comparison last week, but I can't remember if I thought it or if I said it out loud, but I find myself in the aftermath of police shooting of unarmed civilians, or at least not pew-pew armed civilians, that we have a different standard of crime, violence, and mistakes when it comes to police officers, just like we do with powerful people in the aftermath of the Me Too movement. There were a lot of people, like, remember when we found out that Matt Lauer had like a button under his desk, like fucking Mr. Burns, and he would push the button and it would lock the door behind him, so he would invite young women into the office and then lock the door behind him. Do I have to say alleged? I don't know if this was actually confirmed. I feel like it was. You guys remember the story I'm talking about? I'm going to say alleged just to cover my ass, but I'm pretty sure it was confirmed. and he would push a button and it would lock the door behind him, and then a bunch of creepy shit would happen. And like then a bunch of people came forward and said that it happened, and the NBC was like, "Well, he's fired now." So I guess that's the end of that question. You know what I mean? Charlie Rose, the same thing happened. Louis C.K., realistically, the only person that ended up running into any kind of repercussions for his actions was Harvey Weinstein, and that was dragged out. And I'm pretty sure most recently I saw that he got released. Did I see that correctly? I'm pretty sure he's not even in jail anymore for like a lifetime of being a piece of shit. And so I was there in 2018, 2019 saying it's pretty crazy that a lot of these people are being found guilty of sexual assault, if not something much, much worse. And their punishment is that they lose their job. Now, don't get me wrong, as someone who works in media, when you lose a job like that, and you don't have the capacity to immediately bounce back on your feet and surpass the follower count of the shitty little station that did the firing, that sucks. You know what I mean? Like, it's shitty to lose that position, especially when it's a multi-million-dollar position. But in the grand scheme of things, if a butcher were found guilty of doing the exact same thing, something tells me the prison time sentence would be a decent bit longer than anything that any of the people that we saw, Weinstein notwithstanding, go through in the aftermath. And I would argue the same thing is true of police-involved shootings. When not all of them are as cut and dry as this, but after seeing 3 bullets put into a man laying on his back, clearly that was an emotional response, assuming the slashing or the stabbing or however it's being described is as bad as reported. It seems as though it was an emotional response. Someone was mad about what happened and immediately plugged them 3 times. We can have a real conversation about self-defense, what goes into the job of being a law enforcement agent, all of these different factors. I'm not condoning it. I'm saying that we can have that conversation. I think a conversation that's fairly cut and dry is that any person willing to put 3 bullets in a man laying on his back, regardless of what happened before that, should not be a police officer. And I don't think that that's a bold statement. At the minimum, it shouldn't be excused without leave. It shouldn't be suspended with or without pay. It should be this person's never going to have law enforcement authority again. He will never be able to use his position of power in a way to make anybody feel small or helpless or violate them in any way ever again. Absolute bare minimum, without getting any more of the information that is necessary other than that. Just looking at the video and seeing the way that he reacted. Oh, okay. So that's not a police officer then. That's not somebody that should be able to do this, because that was pretty disgusting what we ultimately ended up seeing. And then pursue the legal elements. I'm not saying that losing your job should be the end-all be-all, but I remember the reason I brought up Me Too was I was criticizing, like, I can't believe they're doing all these awful things and the only punishment they're getting is that they're losing their job. Well, in the police world, they don't even get that punishment. They just go on a break for a little bit and then come back. I think we can maybe have a conversation about the future of that in police work. Justin, you're gonna have to let me know what Kelda said in the gun email. I'm interested. DJ Benza says, I was wondering if the kitchen knife was intended for breaking into cars, hence it wasn't utilized as a weapon, but I went to Reddit to see that's possible to use as a Slim Jim. I was flagged. LOL. You know, as a shadow banned bandit, DJ, I can deal. I can vibe with that. Although I'm not banned anymore, I'm popping on all cylinders. Robin says, I get adrenaline is a situation like that, but where was the training to stop them from shooting? Exactly, because there was no Hold on, I'll repost this for Justin there. There was no immediate threat once he was on the ground. Again, I understand that you guys are putting yourself, you guys being police, you end up in sticky situations a lot of the time. But I think it's also worth acknowledging, as I oftentimes state, um, our attitude towards police has it's almost from like a superhero world. Like there really aren't that many bad guys that are out there. You know what I mean? Like these regular ass traffic stops should not be resulting in this. Addressing people dealing with mental health issues should not be worried about whether or not they're going to come out of the situation on top. And then I was sent by a friend of mine, a group of 3 police officers dealing with a nonverbal autistic child, or I guess he was verbal, but it really wasn't. You know, there's variations, and he most certainly was struggling to take grasp of the situation at hand and was behaving very violently. And these 4 police officers were able to like slowly talk down this individual who was struggling with it. And they said, this is actually hard for me to watch and it makes me feel emotional. I said, I'll be real with you. This kind of feels like propaganda to me because that should be the standard. It should be the standard. Cassandra says, who watches The Watchmen? I actually watched The Watchmen over the weekend, but I get your point. Nevertheless, you're exactly right. We can treat people with respect while also upholding the law. Exactly. Why are you saying I emerged from the shadows? What shadows was I hiding in? It's kind of a rough comparison. The reason no one powerful went to jail in Me Too was because if you went to trial, you'll probably see a lot of other people catch some charges. I'd argue the same would be true of the police station. Oh, yes, okay, I'm no longer shadow banned anymore. Yes, exactly. I thought I said something that you were taking issue with, and I was preparing to start a conflict here. I have more thoughts on this, but I want to allow OG Justin hopped into backstage there. I'm going to bring him up in a second. Second Amendment rights are very important to him, and he wants to get an idea of exactly where the Democratic candidates stand on those because, not too long ago, Democrats tended to make it a focal point, and it's my opinion the reason they made it a focal point is because they could win elections without promising any kind of economic reform, which is both Democrat and Republicans' main strategy. Want us to be mean to Mexicans? You want access to abortions? You want all these things? As long as you don't access the tax the rich, we'll help you try and get those things across the finish line, and gun rights was one of them. He's been struggling to get some answers, but he informed me Kelda Royce did inform to him here. I'm going to bring him on stage, see what she said. What's up, man? What are her thoughts?
Hey, so basically, I reached out to Royce, Crowley, and Brennan 6 days ago, and she's the only one I heard back from. Without reading my email off, I just generally was inquiring about what is your position on the Second Amendment, and as well as flock and ICE. So it was basically a 3-pointed email, and she had responded today, and she was the only one that responded. Thanks for the questions. Even when we disagree, she takes seriously the concerns that pro-gun constituents raise and appreciates the ability to engage in respectful dialogue. Basically, she said, none of the policies I advocate for will prevent law-abiding gun owners from owning and using firearms, but they do recognize that the right to own a gun, like all our rights, is not unlimited. So she just wants some responsibilities with it. Supports universal background checks, no argument. Safe storage, no argument. Extreme risk protection orders, there could be some issues there. Restoring the waiting period for purchasing a gun, a ban on ghost guns, and required distribution of gun safety information at point of sale. She also has authored legislation to expand access to mental health services. Regarding flock cameras, hates them. She says, as a longtime privacy and civil liberties advocate, she opposes big tech's efforts to surveil us for profit and the Trump regime's efforts to weaponize that data. So she recognizes that these technologies have actually helped public safety in some cases, but she says we cannot allow private companies to have control of these and our data. She said, gave examples of how they've been used to track abortion patients and tracking immigrants by ICE. She also goes on to say that it's important we have regulation about how the data is stored. Maybe it should be deleted right away. It's not shared or sold by public or private entities. And lastly, she said that she supports efforts to ban the use of flock or similar networks unless and until ironclad protections are in place. So she wants to prevent government or private misuse. And she said, also lastly says, for over a decade, I have called for the abolition of ICE. So that's about it.
Okay, I mean, it's nice when you don't get a form email at the very least. Did that answer suffice for you, or what were your thoughts after reading it?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with her answer. I would say pretty mostly in agreement. I don't think there's ever going to be a candidate for anyone, regardless of your, strong issues or viewpoints. That's going to be 100%.
Sure.
It means a lot to me that she got back to me. The other two did not, and that's a strong message in my opinion. They could be very busy, but even a canned email that covers the issues, someone's got to be in charge of handling that PR.
Absolutely. And I already know the answer to this question, but just for the people listening at home, why didn't you send an email to Francesca Hong?
She's really not on my radar for a candidate. I think that, like I brought up before, I have concerns about the DSA goals and some of their parallels with communism.
Perfect. Hey, man, thanks for hopping on. I'm glad she got back to you. It's good stuff, and it does matter. The outreach, it really is. At the end of the day, politics is a game, and you got to play it the right way. And part of playing that game is making people feel like they're heard and acknowledged when they have questions. So good on Kelda for getting back to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, dude. You take it easy. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye. Brian says, again, Ben Flock, your ring is just as devious. Okay, first of all, not my ring. I do not have a Ring camera. I do not have an Alexa. I do not have a Flock camera. I have a Mac. I'm currently being spied on right here and right here, but I'm absolutely not increasing it in any kind of meaningful way. I don't even have, so I have like an Xbox One from back in the day, and like you used to be able to put an Xbox Connect on there, and the commercials would be like, "Hey guys, how cool is this? Xbox on," and then the Xbox would turn itself on, and I was like, if when my Xbox is off and I say Xbox on and then it turns on, what that says to me is by adding this thing, my Xbox is never off and it's going to hear me all the time. No, I hate Xbox. It was a gift. It was a gift. Don't give me that. Don't give me that, Violet. It was a gift. I hate Xbox. Go PlayStation. But I have a PlayStation 5. All right, I got the newer PlayStation 5. But in any event, the idea that it was always on always bothered me. So like I don't have any of that shit. People are like, you don't have an Alexa? I said, I can just get up and turn my lights off by myself. I don't have to say, Alexa, dim the lights, and then have it dim the lights. I can live in a world where I just go dim the lights. That's fine. That's fine. I'll live. I think we'll all live. Get the flock out of here, I guess is my point. CKK, who said gun control has been a key reason that I haven't been voting for Democrats. Francesca Hong is a template gun control talking points paragraph on her campaign page. Yeah, I mean, the basic talking points, right? And I mean, fundamentally, I think it's the double-edged sword of acknowledging that as long as we are in a society that doesn't take mental health issues seriously, we're going to be dealing with that kind of thing, mixed with we're the only country that has this kind of prevalence with mass pew-pewings, and I think we have to acknowledge that there's probably something wrong with the way that we are doing things. As somebody who is a staunch defender of the Second Amendment, I think it's hard to avoid that clearly we're doing something wrong. And I have some theories about that we could get into in another time, but I have some theories about that. as well. But to bring it back into the realm of Madison here, it seems like a lot of these claims are for basic oversight, the removal of people at the top of a lot of these groups that are supposed to be responsible for allowing for that oversight, and a complete fundamental shift in the way that policing is happening in Madison. And like, as a former city boy, I'm a big fan of understanding that Madison, in the grand scheme of cities, really doesn't have a massive violence problem. And like, as I was kind of intimating before, the reason why we give police so much leeway is because we act like they're in a perpetual state of cracking down on all of these bad guys. But like, I would posit something different to you. We know where all the gangs are. We know where the drug dealers are. We know where they're selling their drugs. We know where all of these things are happening. And yet we allow these actions to persist because of the ways that the system works. For the record, this is not me saying let's arrest all the people dealing drugs. This is me highlighting that in an economic system where you no longer see a path forward through putting your 40 hours in, contributing to society and make a difference, it inevitably is ultimately going to lead to people operating outside of that system. So now you're operating outside of that system, you're on a corner and you're working that corner, but then somebody else shows up and says, that's my corner now. Okay, so now this has been your means for making your living every single day. Somebody else is coming and trying to take those means. You can't go to the police to talk about it because they're just going to end up arresting both of you, and then that is where violence ultimately stems from. But the reason why it is coming in the first place is because nobody sees a viable option to getting out of whatever their situation is, their economic treadmill, through working anymore. I know enough people in my life that aren't burdened by years slash decades of a system holding them down to try and climb out of some mountain of debt. They're struggling to break even just with a basic ass life. Just like, I don't have any ailments and I don't have any systemic oppression weighing me down or anything like that, let alone if you have to overcome that as well. Have that conversation about policing, and I think you would have a lot more people willing to talk to you in good faith about why it is that people are acting the way that they are acting. And when you see these demands, I think it's a pretty reasonable ask, all things considered. All right. Seems like a conversation has started on YouTube here. What did people do before Alexa? I think I only started existing when the Echo Dot appeared in my house one day. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You sound like the woman who scared Francesca Hong's going to take away Thanksgiving. I remember in the late 80s, I was the remote control. Justin changed the channel. Exactly. Wait, why did I sound like Harvey Dent? What was the part that I said about Harvey Dent? Oh, arresting all the drug dealers. Yeah. What can we do with 18 months of clean streets? You know what's crazy is if Batman existed in real life, I would absolutely fucking hate him. You know what I mean? Like, that fascist, who's he to decide? Meanwhile, I'm like, yeah, we need to operate outside the system. Uh, Trees are cool says it's not as devious. Be for real. There's a huge difference in storage of info and access as well as metadata accumulation. Being scared of communism when we are in the failing stages of capitalism and are so far away from communism is also silly. I don't know what that's in relation to what I was saying. I'll be honest, I don't know. Violet says we have an organized crime ring in the White House. You're not wrong. Um, yeah, some say he operates outside the box in theaters now. Yeah, no, I absolutely feel that. But so we'll continue following along with what's going on in Madison. Obviously, the encampment was broken up pretty violently. I do have this statement about flock cameras I wanted to read, which I find very interesting. One individual working in the insurance field saying those flock cameras, I can access them at work. I work in insurance. We use them routinely now. They have me pulling images of your car to see if you lied about damage. Just last week, they had me check multiple cameras on someone's vehicle to see if the damage they claimed had existed or if it was truly new. In about 30 seconds, I had over 150 images of this vehicle all over their hometown. These are not crime fighting tools. These are being used to actually fuck you. We do it through an ISO search, and all we need is your name and address or a VIN or license plate. And they spy on you from there with that kind of stuff. This is what I'm saying. If you want to win an election in 2026, just come out against that lifestyle and come out against data centers, and you got yourself a pretty easy path to victory. Robin says, I use Google Earth to see previous damage from my insurance job. Well, isn't that funny? Because that's just another example. But again, Americans will voluntarily give away their freedoms if they perceive that the benefits are worth it. I remember in the early 2000s, you would like try and like randomly Google Images would always update their photos of your house, and then like one time it would snap a photo while you were cutting the grass, and then you'd show all your friends like, look, this satellite from outer space. If you zoom in, there's me cutting the grass right there. And nobody was worried about the long-term effects of that or how that would ultimately be an impediment to what it is that you were trying to do, because everybody uses GPS and everybody wants to have access to GPS. And using GPS at a time when or using GPS instead of maps, for me, as a millennial, it's the most technology-driven thing that I refuse to punt on. I am here for GPS. People are okay with it. It's the shady nature in which these have been going up with very little oversight until just recently. It was and the ways in which we now know that Flock is telling people how to lie. Not just Flock, for the record, all of these ALPR technologies. By the way, there is a meeting tomorrow in Neenah. I'm not going to be able to make it because I'm going to be co-hosting a watch party for the Wisconsin primary results, but I'll wrap up the show with what we're doing there. But it's just all of the information surrounding them. And again, there's just not enough crime data to back up how necessary it is. One person who's a diehard MAGA was all over social media. There's a new social trend where you say like, I'll use one that's pro-liberal first. They'll be like, the interesting thing about how much Donald Trump spent on the ballroom is that he's mentioned 38,000 times in the Epstein files, trying to make it seem like whatever dumb bullshit you think matters pales in comparison to this statistic right here, and this is what we should actually be talking about. There was a MAGA who was going all over social media who was speaking on the story about the man who drove to Michigan to buy jazz cabbage only to get pulled over on the way home and ultimately busted for having bought the stuff because of what Flock cameras were doing. She would say, what's interesting about the man being arrested by Flock cameras is that between 450 and 600,000 children go missing every year. So immediately I'm just like, bah, what? Like that many kids go missing every year? Like realistically, that's a lot of fucking kids. I don't know how many kids are in America. I know there's 370 million people. The idea that 600,000 of them are getting scooped every year, I was like, all right. Maybe we should be looking into this a little bit more. So I looked into it. I was like, all right, how many kids actually go missing every year? And she fudged the numbers, but sure. We're there. Oh, hey, Malia, what's up? We need to get you back on Thursdays here. Send me a text later with what we're talking about. We got to get you back on the show here, though. But so I start diving into the numbers. It's more like between 300 and 400,000 children go missing every year. And I'm like, okay, still not nothing. That's a crazy number. I can't believe that many people. Then it turns out that more than 50% of them are just runaways from home that ultimately end up coming back within a couple of hours. Then you go and look and realize that a lot of them are people that are grabbed by a family member. And then you go and look, and there's like 6 different examples that are all pretty easily hand waved away for reasons that aren't necessarily nefarious in nature. And then you get to the actual criminal abductions, and it accounts for less than 1%. Now, between 3,000 and 4,000 kids going missing every year is not nothing, and it should be taken seriously. Is that worth giving up all of your rights and all of your freedoms to not be on camera 24/7 and ultimately held to account for something that you have been alleged to do that broke a law, all in the name of addressing this issue? And more importantly, if we are going to address the issue, then why are we 100 timesing the problem in order to try and make a point? They are taking bullshit logic, or let's give this person the benefit of the doubt. They went on Chat GPT, just copied and pasted the data, and didn't actually dive into why it is that these numbers come out the way that they are. Whether or not you think it was nefarious in nature, or the person might just not be thorough in their research, the fact is that it is not a reasonable interpretation of a problem that, while it does exist, is not nearly as prevalent as you think it is. Now, if it's your son or daughter or my son or daughter, all of a sudden the fact that it's such a small number might not matter to us as much. But the fact is, to quote both Spock and Jesus, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And I don't want to be on these cameras 24/7 that are out there. And it's wild that it's so hard to find people willing to say that. Back in my day, we used to use the location of the stars, a sextant, and a compass to get to school. Some old head probably. Yeah, you can't say sextant. You're going to get me banned. Uh, I will use a hunting app with satellite imagery. I believe that there's a big difference between a static image retaken once every year or two and live video feeds. I agree. I agree. But it does say to me, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but it does make me question. I'm like, so wait, can you find me whenever you want to? Like, fundamentally, that's what we watched happen in the aftermath of the Luigi Mangione situation. We learned that if America really wants to find you, if you shoot somebody wealthy enough, America can find you. And they can use an amalgamation of all of these different images. And something tells me they probably can go even more in depth than any of us even realize, but they are afraid to do so, or to let us know, I mean, because there would inevitably be outcry because of that. So, I'm not in favor of it. Stamping that out right there. Hashtag not in favor of it. Honesty is the best policy. Pfft, not in insurance, you kidding me? But yeah, all right, what's this? It is estimated 1.1 million people are human trafficked in the US a year. Can cams help this? I would need to see more on that data before. You're telling me 0.3% of the population is trafficked every year? And again, if that really is the case, then show me some interest in trying to in trying to regulate these things in a way that makes people feel safe. It is the shady nature in which they are popping up everywhere. They hide them in different little parts now. Like, that is the frustration. That is the frustration, is that there is no end-to-end encryption. The ties to Israel and Palantir make people uncomfortable. And again, in a nation where we are watching people criminalize thinking critically about Israel, I do not want to live in a world where we have cameras everywhere being like, wait, did he say that Netanyahu shouldn't be blowing up school children? Fucking arrest that guy. Like, I'm not living there. And we can find out ways to deal with this trafficking thing without completely sacrificing our rights. I think that shouldn't be a bold declarative statement. I think that should be the norm. The oligarchy used that technology to hunt our hero, and here we are doing nothing. I mean, to an extent, I don't know about hero, but I mean, I don't know that he was a villain. I can say that much. Yeah, the fact is, flock cameras have been going up since 2022, and Kristen brings up a good point. I wonder why it hasn't helped yet, though we already have the technology active, and I think that's pretty fair. Um, Again, there's really no amount of crime fear mongering because I'm not from the Fox Valley. Remember this. I'm from a city. So like I hear the way right wingers talk about crime and violence and sex trafficking, not to say it doesn't exist, not to say that it's not a problem, but also that like it's dramatically overrepresented and used to scare people that are not from the city. ALPRs have been used since 2011 in Santa Cruz, says Elf. Exactly. Um, and it's not like flock cameras would be used to crack down on anybody on the Epstein list, right? Hey, let's follow around Bill Gates using these ALPR tech and see what he was doing that entire time. That's not a conversation that's going to be had. Can we all agree? So if you allegedly do care about the trafficking and the underground ring and all that jazz, then that should probably be, like I always say, start at the top and work down. Don't tell me we're not allowed to cook on gas stoves anymore, which isn't happening by and large, but I'm just using this as a hypothetical. Don't tell me I can't cook on gas stoves anymore when you're allowing billionaires to fly private jets. Start up here and then apply it to the masses. Crack down on 950 billionaires, crack down on the people who are mentioned in the Epstein list, and then apply it to the rest of society. Show me that you mean business and you're not just trying to create a police state, which I ultimately think is what they are trying to do with this. We've been using them on toll roads for ages. Exactly. They were still frame, grainy. When you pass through the tolls, here's the license plate in case they don't end up paying it. That I think everybody can get behind. It said it follows people everywhere. And the facial recognition. They're putting these flock cameras up on golf courses now. There's no cars there. That's specifically for facial recognition. Now, again, private companies can do whatever they want. I just wouldn't go golf there, but I also wouldn't go golf anywhere because I don't really do white people stuff. But that's a private institution. Far be it for me. I begrudge nobody who wants facial recognition on their premises and wants to use that to be able to monitor what's going on in their neck of the woods, in their business. Totally. Totally. Do whatever you want. It's the public element of it that I think everybody can and should have a problem with it. Um, Justin says he lolled at white people stuff. Well, you know. But yeah, all right. I feel like that does it for a Monday here. I do want to let you guys know, and I'll be mentioning it again tomorrow as well. I always do Ben After Dark. Tuesday's not going to be any different. However, it's probably going to go late into the evening. Anybody who wants to stick around or stick it out, I'm going to be watching the bulk of the primary results come in tomorrow night, and I'm going to be collaborating with Resistance Radio. It's a progressive talk show. I was on it one other time about a month ago with a couple of people up in Green Bay. We're all going to be meeting at Fox River House. I think there's a watch party going on there, so you're more than welcome to come down live. I'll even bring you on the show if you want to hop on. But so I'm going to be doing a live watch party, and I don't know what to expect on Tuesday. I don't know if there has been a concerted effort, if the Evers endorsement of Crowley is going to make this closer than we think, if we're going to be waiting until 11:30 at night or even later to determine who's going to come away with the governor's race. Again, or come away with the governor's race here, or is it going to be 8:45 and Francesca Hong's going to be up to like 65% and second place is going to be significantly lower than that? I have no idea. So I'm not making any commitment to how long that stream is actually going to be, but I am going to be at a watch party streaming. It might just be on my YouTube and Facebook. I'm going to have to see what kind of technical capabilities I have there, if I'm going to be able to bring Twitter along for the, or rather TikTok along for the ride that night or not. But yeah, and I agree with you, Violet. I'd prefer not to be referred to as laid off a second time in a row. but we'll see what happens. But in any event, so that will be tomorrow. We obviously have a Ben After Dark tonight as well at 7 p.m. We'll be jumping into that. But I just want to let you guys know, Fox River House, I'll be there right around 7 o'clock and probably hanging around at least into the wee hours. I don't know that I will be physically engaged and talking to you guys the entire time. We'll see what happens if there's a rotation of people. I know Meg's going to be there, who has been on a Ben After Dark before. I might try and find a way to bring Aaron the intern on if it's possible. Again, with the technical capabilities that I have there, we're going to have to cross that bridge as we go. But nevertheless, I hope you guys, if you can't show up in person, don't watch the results alone. Watch it with some friends. Watch it with this community, and tell 5 friends that we're also going to be doing that. So that is tomorrow. No interviews as far as I'm aware. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to schedule David Crowley to come on the show, which I'm kicking myself for. But we did lose a week and a half in the aftermath of the tornado in terms of me really setting up conversations and whatnot. So, yes, Carla, I did not have any doubts about whether or not you would be attending that party tomorrow or not. Did not cross my mind. Have fun at your watch party, though. Maybe we'll try and find a way to get you on. We can cross streams, as the kids say, and talk about what we're seeing at our respective parties there. But so, all right. That does it for that. Thank you very much. Again, if you're joining us late, Rick Crosson was on at the first half hour. It'll be available once it's up on my YouTube page, once it renders and all that jazz. We'll be back tonight, Ben After Dark, 7 p.m. Central Time, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Please support the show any way you can, whether that's subscribing, if you can make contributions. I do have a link tree available in my bio, wherever it is that you are listening to this show right now. I got to get out of here, get an article ready for the Minocqua Brewing Company, and then I'm off to set up my professional studio at my sponsor's place with a couple of friends of mine. So we'll be talking to that. All right, with that, I will leave you guys all to it. We will talk soon. Take it easy.